Hi there, and welcome to another exciting video by the Artful Coder. In my previous two videos, I've covered object orientation, parts of it, and the use of interfaces, but again, we'll expand on this. So, just to recap, we've got a little application, a console application that is creating variations of a building. So, a building is our parent class, our father class, and a flat and a house are our children classes. So these are instances of objects, but there may be times that you need to use what's called a static. So a static class is something that holds data or or a variable across instances of that class. So let's do this. We're going to create something over here. So let's create it called a new folder called, let's call it statics. Statics. And let's create a new class in here. Add new item, static counter. And what we're going to do is we're going to create public. Again, we're going to create a public class static. But the difference is now is you use a static keyword. So this is a static class. So we're going to have a public. I'm going to show you how to set this. So we've got here. So yes, you could increment this, but I want to use a method in here to do this. And the reason I want to do that is just showing more of an old style way of updating this. So let's create function static void increment and counter. And that's just going to do nothing pretty much there. I can get this down to here. Okay, so all we're going to say is this dot, okay, excuse me. Oh, hang on. Sorry, I've got autocorrect going on. This dot doesn't like that. So count. No, okay, so it should be this. Should be count. Okay, so count. Okay, it's not liking this for some reason. Okay, so let's try. Let's not do a getter or setter. Let's change this to an old style equals 0. Let's try that. Okay, put that in there. So we want to use methods on a static to do this. So this dot, we'll get this dot. Okay, it doesn't like that for some reason. So count. It's not liking that, is it, people? Why is it not liking that? This should be static. Oh, you have to call it. Yeah, okay. I was thinking different realms. Dot. Okay, yeah. And it's plus plus. Let's see if this does this. Oh, you know what it is, people? It's because I put it outside the class. Apologies. Okay, so what we should be able to say is this. Fight me instead. Equals this dot. This equals this dot. Oh my days. Okay, so can we simply say count plus plus? Okay, right, so we've got there, apologies for that. So what we've got now is we've got a static class, and we have another method down here which is public void statics, it's static void. Again, it's suggesting decrement count. Let's just put that in as well. Okay, so public static print counter. Now what we're going to say is console, right line, I have X number of, let's do count plus, oh, hang on, boys. We're going to say buildings. And the good thing about this is you can mix and match statics and non-statics. So for example, you could simply have the class as non-static, but the variable within it static. So let's see if we can do an example of that. That's going to work. So what we're going to do is I'll just show you how this works. So we've got a static method, methods and variables. This is showing them. What we'll do as well is we'll create another variable in here. We'll do a mixture. Let's do a mixture. Let's call this string name. Okay. So we've got static parameters mixed with non-static, and I'll show you what's going to happen. So this is where it gets really interesting. Okay. So we're going to need to bring it in. So let's do using OOP models dot for statics. So we want to use statics. And what you can do now is, this is where it gets really interesting. So we could say that when we create a flat, we're going to increment the static. So we're going to say public flat. And again, you can do this. So we're going to bring that down there. We're going to say here, static. Okay, so it needs access to it. So let's do using OOP models dot core dot statics. And what I want to do is I'll say static counter dot increment counter. Okay, so we're going to create a flat, we're incrementing the counter, and just so you can see what it's going to do, we're going to call the last thing, it's a static method. At the end of our program, we're just going to call static counter dot fish. What do we get then? So if we do that, let's see what this does. Okay, so we've got one building there because we've called it as pointed out. But then what we can do is, so let's have a look at this. So, but then also as well, we can then create objects of our static classes. So var static counter one. Okay. Okay, so we've got a couple of instances of that. And that's not going to break our coded project. There you go. So nothing's happened. It's created the objects. But the good thing about this now is we can go back here and we can print that. So let's have a look. So then what we can do is each of these statics can have names. So this is where it gets really interesting. Because what you can do is this is name equals counter one. And in the second one as well, we can say do that. And we can say name equals counter two. Okay. So again, if we run that, nothing will change. Oh, we've got errors. Lovely. I love errors. And it does help if you don't put. So this is using the more streamlined version of object initialization, which you don't need semicolons within this bit here because it just throws a wobbly. So if we do that, again, nothing's happened. But if we then call, what we're going to do, so we've got a mixture of statics and non-statics. And when we create a flat, it's going to increment the counter. So this is what's shared across variables. So if I just do a console, right line, and I can say static counter dot, no, we're already doing, that's what print count does. So we can then say static counter dot print counter. This should equal 1 because we're not doing anything to affect that. Again, here we go. Oh, it's because we've just printed out what's already there. So what we can then do is you can say, well, we want to increment how many. It's not how you do it, you use arrays and lists and stuff like that to do it, but it's just trying to skim it down. So let's then say down here, static counter dot increment counter. Okay. So if we run that again now, what we should see is just 1 because we've not outputted it. So let's just change our line up here, move this above this. There. We should see that's 2 now. Done. And what would happen if we reference this? Let's see if this lets us do this. If we say static counter 2 dot. Okay, so what you can see is you can't call static methods on instances. So a counter is across instances. It's a way of storing information that persists pretty much across objects. And again, you can't do this. You can't say call that method because it is a static. So it has access to that. So yes, you could say here that, here we go. What we can do is we could say here, you could say down here, for example, well, that's a bad example. So it exists across different objects. So you just use the static keyword, you can have static class, you can have static methods, and you can have static properties. And you can mix and match. For example, what we're going to do is just demonstrate this. We've got a name there. So what we're going to do is we're going to say here, let's just go back here, say console dot right line, say static counter 1 dot name. There you go. So if we run that back up, there you go, counter 1. So it's detected we've got 2 buildings. These are all different bits and pieces it's doing. So it knows, so it's still kept that counter. So again, if we now created a brand new flat, so let's clone this. Let's just clone this before we get to increment a counter. Just by creating call static method, so flat do. This one has 6 windows and is more like a maisonette flat. So what we should have now is 3 in our counter. There you go. So by calling that, we're incrementing a static, a central way of storing information. Okay, good. So what we've now got is our program. It's a bit messy. I'll probably tidy all this up and have a function that declares all the objects. etc. Yada yada yada. But this is another video in the Artful Coder series. I hope you enjoy it, and please keep checking in for more videos. I'm trying to cover off basic concepts just so it gets you started and explains it all without having to spend an hour listening to one individual video. So again, thank you so much for watching.